The blazing summer sun beat down relentlessly on Andrews Air Force Base, making the flags ripple like restless spirits in the hot wind. Rows of uniformed Air Force personnel stood in sharp, unyielding formation, their pristine uniforms a stark contrast to the oppressive heat. Today was no ordinary day. It was President Donald Trump's surprise visit, a moment of profound significance to honor airmen returning from a classified humanitarian mission overseas. The mood was a strange blend of patriotic anticipation and heavy, unspoken sorrow. Cameras clicked incessantly, capturing every detail, while families waited, a silent, anxious cluster, and the press lined the side, eager for any hint of a story. The president's arrival brought a wave of both anticipation and nerves, a palpable tension in the air. Yet, one airman, Senior Airman Jace Carter, stood frozen, not from nerves, but from something far deeper, something that gnawed at his very soul. As Trump walked down the line, offering firm handshakes and returning crisp salutes, he paused before Jace. The young airman stood tall, his gaze fixed directly into the president's eyes, but his hand remained stubbornly by his side. A quiet gasp rippled through the formation, a collective breath held in disbelief. Trump held his posture, arm mid-salute, suspended in an awkward tableau. Jace remained utterly still, unyielding. No one moved. Secret Service agents exchanged quick, worried glances. The silence stretched, growing deafening, heavy with unspoken questions. Finally, Trump, with a subtle nod, lowered his salute. "At ease, son," he said, his voice quiet, almost understanding. Jace gave a stiff nod, but no words escaped his lips. Behind them, a general's face drained of color, his mind reeling. What had just happened? Why had this decorated airman, known for valor and leadership, refused to salute the commander-in-chief? No one had an answer, but the story, steeped in silent grief and unwavering loyalty, was only just beginning to unfold. The sterile, impersonal chaos of Washington, D.C.'s International Airport hummed around him. Travelers rushed, a blur of hurried purpose towards their gates, their destination-driven announcements droning overhead, a constant, indifferent hum. Yet, amidst this frantic dance of departure and arrival, one man stood as still as a monument. Sergeant Samuel Harper, a tomb guard from Arlington's Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. His uniform, a pristine vow of white gloves, shoes polished to a mirror shine, and the gleaming badge of the tomb guard on his chest, spoke volumes. His face was a mask of composure, eyes fixed forward, but beneath the scarlet and black of his uniform, a profound weight pressed against his heart. Today, his sacred duty wasn't at the silent, hallowed tomb, but here, in this bustling nexus of humanity, to escort a fallen brother home. That brother was Private First Class Daniel Walsh, just 25 years old. Sam could still hear Danny's laughter echoing under desert stars, remember the shared stories of home, feel the grip of a promise made in the crucible of combat. If I don't make it, bring me home proper, full honors through the main concourse, not some back exit. Dad would have wanted it done right. 3 days ago, that promise became a devastating reality. Danny was gone, killed in a classified mission in the Middle East, a heroic act that saved his squad. Now his flag-draped casket awaited on the tarmac, and Sam, with every fiber of his being, would not let him down. Every measured step he took today was for Danny, for the boy who loved baseball, who dreamed of flying planes, who died saving his comrades. That promise burned in his chest, an unyielding fire. Across the terminal, another heart bore the agony of loss. Margaret Walsh, Maggie to her friends, stood with her granddaughter Emma. At 70, Maggie's face was a landscape of lines, etched by too many wars. From Vietnam to today, she had seen the cost of conflict. Danny was her pride, her light, now a void. She clutched Emma's small hand, the child's soft warmth a fragile anchor as they waited to say their final goodbye. Emma, just 10, looked up with wide, innocent eyes. "Grandma, is that Danny's plane?" she asked, her voice soft but piercing. The din. Maggie nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She'd sent her husband to war, then her son. Now she was here to bring him home. But not everyone in the airport understood the profound weight of this moment. In an office overlooking the terminal, James Thornton, the airport's operations manager, stared at his tablet, his fingers drumming an impatient rhythm. His world revolved around a ruthless 98% on-time departure rate. His badge of honor. Framed certificates of efficiency lined his walls, and digital screens tracked flights, gates, and the dreaded red marks of delays. A military procession through the main concourse. That was a disruption he couldn't afford. "We can't have this," he muttered to his assistant, Sarah, his voice taut with frustration. "Why wasn't I told earlier? The service corridors are there for a reason. Get it rerouted." Sarah cleared her throat, a nervous gesture. "Sir, the airport director approved the main concourse route." Thornton's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "This airport runs on precision, not pageantry," he snapped, already calculating the minutes lost during the peak 2:30 rush, 19 departures in that critical window. They simply couldn't afford delays. The stage was set for a collision, the relentless pursuit of efficiency against the sacred duty of honor, a clash that would force a crowded airport to witness a battle for dignity. The aircraft door opened with a mechanical hiss, a breath drawn before a moment of profound solemnity. The honor guard emerged, their movements a stark ballet of precision and deliberate grace. Then the flag-draped casket appeared, the vivid stars and stripes a stark, vibrant contrast against the cold utilitarian gray of the tarmac. Ground crew members removed their caps, their heads bowed in a spontaneous act of respect, recognizing the gravity of the arrival. Sam took his place beside the casket, his scarlet uniform aflame against the cold efficiency surrounding him, his presence a silent defiance of the mundane. Meanwhile, James Thornton strode through the terminal, his clipboard clutched like a shield against any perceived inefficiency. "We'll use the service corridors," he told his hurried staff, already directing them towards the arrivals hall. "It's efficient. Won't disrupt thousands of passengers. The military can have their ceremony at the cemetery." Sarah, the young security officer, hesitated, her gaze drifting towards the site on the tarmac. "But sir, the director approved the main route." Thornton waved her off, his impatience boiling. "I'm responsible for this terminal. We don't stop for parades." The procession began, each step measured, dignified, a slow, deliberate challenge to the frantic pace around them. Travelers slowed, sensing something sacred unfolding. An elderly man nodded respectfully, his eyes glinting with understanding. A group of teenagers whispered, momentarily silenced, their phones forgotten. A businessman checked his watch, then paused, caught by the solemn magnetic sight. Sam's face remained impassive, a mask of unwavering duty, but the photograph in his breast pocket, worn soft from years of handling, a picture of him and Danny, arms slung around each other, grinning under a desert moon, anchored him. This wasn't about schedules. This was about Danny, about a debt that transcended mere efficiency. Thornton approached the procession before it even reached the terminal doors, a figure of agitated authority. "Sergeant," he said, his voice low, a forced civility barely veiling his irritation, "I've prepared an alternative route." He unfolded a map, pointing to a highlighted, narrow path. "These service corridors lead directly to the pickup area. It's faster." Sam's response was immediate, unwavering, a steel rod of quiet resolve. "This is Private First Class Daniel Walsh, United States Army. We will proceed through the main terminal, as arranged, at the appropriate pace for escorting the fallen." Thornton leaned closer, his tone sharper, his patience evaporating. These corridors were designed for movements that shouldn't disrupt operations. "Shouldn't disrupt," Sam echoed, his eyes hardening, a dangerous glint entering their depths. "Private Walsh will be escorted with full honors through the main terminal." Thornton jabbed at the map again, his frustration mounting. "There's a service elevator to the loading area. You'd avoid delaying thousands of passengers." "The disruption is temporary," Sam said, his voice steady, carrying an immutable truth. The dishonor of skulking through back corridors would be permanent. Thornton's composure cracked. He signaled Sarah, his face flushed with impotent rage. This is absurd. Airport protocols supersede your parade. Sarah approached, her hand on her radio, but her eyes fell upon the casket, the flag catching sunlight from a nearby window. Her hand dropped, her resolve faltering. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice unsure. "Yes," Thornton snapped. "We need this procession redirected for operational reasons." Sarah looked at the casket, then at the growing crowd of onlookers, their silence a profound collective judgment. "Sir, the director approved this route. I don't see an operational issue justifying a change." Thornton's face burned. "I'm responsible for this terminal. These delays cascade through the system." The crowd was larger now, their silence a pocket of reverence in the bustling terminal, a stark contrast to Thornton's escalating agitation. An elderly man in a USMC cap, George Miller, stepped forward, his voice rough but clear, carrying the weight of experience. "I served in Vietnam. I lost brothers who never came home. This soldier deserves better than a back hallway." His words rippled through the crowd, a wave of agreement. A businessman pocketed his phone, his face solemn. A mother whispered to her curious child, her voice laced with understanding. A flight attendant stopped mid-stride, her eyes wide with a dawning realization. Maggie Walsh, sensing the shift, moved closer, Emma clutching her hand. "My Danny," Maggie said, her voice trembling but strong, filled with a mother's fierce love and pride. "He loved baseball, dreamed of flying planes. He died saving his squad. He deserves this honor." The terminal grew quieter still, the profound weight of her words sinking in, transforming the bustling concourse into a silent, hallowed space. Thornton, undeterred by the burgeoning crowd's silent condemnation, stepped forward, his hand raised, ready to halt the sacred procession. "Sergeant," he commanded, his voice tight with finality, "I'm ordering you to redirect." Sam's gaze didn't waver, holding Thornton's eyes with an unyielding force. "There are regulations older than your airport," he said, his voice low, cutting through the tension like a blade. "They govern how we honor those who gave everything." He paused, his gaze dropping to the flag-draped casket, a symbol of ultimate sacrifice. Lieutenant Walsh died serving his country, in full view of the world. He will not be hidden in death. Then, in a moment of pure, unthinking audacity, Thornton's hand brushed the very edge of the flag, a ripple passing through the sacred fabric. A collective gasp rolled through the crowd, an audible shock. Time seemed to collapse. Sam moved with fluid precision, his hand closing around Thornton's wrist, gentle yet impossibly firm. "Don't touch the flag," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it resonated through the hushed terminal, an unyielding truth, rooted in centuries of military honor and sacrifice. Thornton's face registered shock, then indignation. "Take your hands off me," he hissed, his voice tight with suppressed fury. "This is assault. I'll have security escort you out." The crowd's silence deepened, a tangible tension in the air. George Miller, the elderly Vietnam veteran, removed his cap, placing it over his heart, a silent gesture of profound respect. A flight attendant, tears welling in her eyes, discreetly wiped them away. A businessman, his earlier impatience long forgotten, closed his laptop, his attention fully captured by the unfolding drama. What Thornton, in his rigid adherence to airport protocols, utterly failed to grasp was that touching the flag was more than a mistake. It was a desecration, an unforgivable insult to Danny, to his grieving family, and to every single soldier who had ever served their country. Sam held Thornton's wrist for 3 agonizing seconds, his face betraying nothing of the raw emotion simmering beneath his composed exterior. Then he released him, his gaze steady, unwavering. Veterans in the crowd recognized the profound restraint, the depth of suppressed betrayal in Sam's stance. "The flag represents a soldier's dedication." Sam's voice was steady, a clear, resonant declaration despite the emotion that churned beneath. The values they upheld. The sacrifice they made. It is not to be touched by anyone outside the honor guard. Thornton rubbed his wrist, defiance flickering in his eyes. "This is my terminal," he said. His voice lower now, a desperate attempt to reassert his authority. "I determine how things are done here. Military personnel are authorized to protect the flag and casket from desecration," Sam cut in, his tone final, absolute. "Our actions are guided by protocols older than your position or this airport." The crowd's reverence grew palpable. Travelers stood motionless, many with heads bowed, as if the bustling terminal had spontaneously transformed into hallowed ground. "That's Danny's flag," a small voice from the crowd's edge, clear and heartbreaking, sliced through the tension. It was Emma Walsh, perched in her grandmother's arms, her tiny finger pointing at the casket. Her words, innocent yet powerful, held the crushing weight of profound loss. Maggie held her tighter, her weathered face a map of grief and pride. Her eyes meeting Sam's in a silent acknowledgement of shared sorrow. Just then, Captain Evelyn Carter, the airport director and a retired army officer, approached with measured, decisive steps. Her uniform was civilian, but her bearing was undeniably military, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the scene. The honor guard in formation, Thornton standing awkwardly, and the casket at the very center of this unexpected standoff. "Mr. Thornton," she said, her voice quiet but firm, cutting through the tension. "Step aside." Turning to Sam, her tone softened, a shared understanding passing between them. "Sergeant, my apologies. Your procession will continue through the main terminal as planned." Thornton began to protest, clutching his clipboard like a lifeline, but Carter silenced him with a raised hand. She understood what Thornton, with his spreadsheets and metrics, couldn't, that some moments transcend mere efficiency, that traditions carry a weight no operational report could ever measure, that honor demands its rightful space. She took the terminal's microphone, her voice echoing through the vast space, carrying a profound message. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? A fallen soldier is being escorted through our terminal today. As a sign of respect, we ask that you join us in forming a corridor of honor for his final journey home." The terminal transformed. Travelers who'd been rushing to gates, oblivious to anything but their schedules, stopped, moving deliberately to the concourse's edges. Businessmen closed laptops mid-email. Parents gathered their children, whispering about sacrifice and duty. Airport staff abandoned their posts, forming silent lines along the path. The chaotic terminal became a solemn passage, a reverent space. A businessman who'd complained bitterly about delays now stood with head bowed. A teenage girl slipped her phone into her pocket, her eyes wide with dawning understanding. George Miller stood straighter, his hand in a precise salute. An elderly man in a wheelchair rose, supported by his wife, his trembling hand finding his brow in a gesture of profound respect. The procession resumed, Sam at its head, the flag a brilliant beacon of sacrifice and honor through the silent corridor of respect. Not a word was spoken, not a single phone was raised to record the moment. Even the terminal's announcements seemed to hush, as if the very building held its breath. Sam's face remained impassive, but his eyes carried a new light, an acknowledgement that his unwavering stand had awakened something powerful and unifying within the diverse crowd. Across the concourse, his gaze met Maggie's. No words passed between them. None were needed. In that silent glance was a promise kept, honor maintained, sacrifice recognized. Maggie nodded once, a soldier's quiet acknowledgement, passing from one generation to another, a bond forged in shared loss and enduring pride. Outside, the hearse waited, its black surface gleaming under the muted afternoon sun, a somber vessel for a final journey. The honor guard, with movements honed by reverence and discipline, placed Danny's casket inside with utmost care, the flag still vibrant against the gray tarmac, a beacon of sacrifice. Maggie and Emma approached, Emma clutching a single innocent daisy, her small hand a fragile counterpoint to her grandmother's weathered grip. Maggie took Sam's hand, her own grip surprisingly strong despite her years, and the unshed tears in her eyes. "You kept your promise, Sam," she said, her voice brimming with emotion but firm, a soldier's quiet acknowledgement. Sam reached into his pocket, pulling out the worn photograph. The one of him and Danny, laughing under a desert moon, a vivid relic of a shared past. He pressed it into her hand. "For you, Maggie." "For Emma." Emma stepped forward, her small hand extending, and gently placed the daisy on the casket. "You're my hero, Danny," she whispered, her tiny voice breaking the profound silence, a fragile echo of love. Travelers, held at a distance by an unspoken pact of respect, watched from afar. Some wiped tears from their own eyes. Others stood in silent tribute, their earlier haste forgotten. Thornton, his clipboard gone, his head bowed, approached Sam. "Sergeant," he said, his voice barely audible, stripped of its former arrogance. "I was wrong. I didn't understand." Sam met his eyes, then nodded. His silence a quiet, profound forgiveness. The hearse pulled away, carrying Danny on his final journey to Arlington, a sacred destination. Sam's salute held steady, unwavering, until the vehicle vanished from sight. His posture a testament to the immense weight of the moment and the solemnity of his duty. What had begun as a bureaucratic standoff, a clash of schedules versus sanctity, had transformed into something truly profound. A powerful reminder that some traditions endure not just because they are old, but because they speak to our deepest need to honor sacrifice with dignity. That night, Sam returned to the tomb of the unknown soldier. Under a sky sprinkled with indifferent stars, he resumed his eternal watch. 21 steps, a turn, a pause, then 21 steps again. The wind carried the weight of his duty, a constant reminder that some promises outlast time, outlast life itself. In a world that ceaselessly rushes forward, some stand still, resolute, to honor those who gave everything. Let us remember them not just in silence, but in the courage to stand for what is right. For Danny, for every soldier who never came home, and for those who keep their promises no matter the cost. This is the story of a tomb guard and a fallen soldier, of a crowded airport transformed into a cathedral of respect, of a photograph and a promise that held fast against the relentless rush of time. It is a reminder that at the tomb of the unknown soldier, where every step is measured and every salute is sacred, the greatest tribute to the fallen is standing firm for their honor. So pause today. Think of Sam, of Danny, of the countless heroes whose names we carry in silence. Share their story not just to honor them, but to remind us all that duty is not just in the act, but in the heart that refuses to forget. And if you find yourself at Arlington, stand before the tomb, watch the guard's steady pace, and listen. You might just hear the pulse of a nation, strong and unbroken through the weight of sacrifice.